Grand Rising, Grand Rising. Beautiful people. How you doing? How you doing? It's Coach Renz with Why I Left Religion. Coach Renz. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Josephus, a little bit about Vespasian, about Constantine, just a little bit about Constantine, really. He really don't play that much of a factor in this today's discussion. But we're going to get rid of the notion that Constantine created Christianity so that when we're having these conversations with other people, we are speaking correctly. Now, I'm going to give people a little bit of time to get on. It's a little warm in here. Give people a little bit of time to get on here today. So, if you're watching this in review, you might want to skip to about 3-4 minutes into it. But we're going to get started here soon. As you know, I'm the owner of Smoking Phoenix Cigar Lounge. Hence, cigars is always part of my shtick. But we're going to break down some more deconstructing of religion today. Why is it hot here? Give me a second. I need to turn the air conditioner down just a little bit. It's hot in Georgia, y'all. I don't know where y'all at, but it's getting nice in Georgia. It's nice and warm in Georgia. I don't know where y'all at. Had to turn the air conditioner down a little bit more. Had to drop the AC a little bit. It's hot in Georgia. I don't know what y'all feeling with. Y'all at? Where y'all at? Where are you? I see my guy Willie Walton, true, tried and true, faithful. Always here, down for the cause. Who else we got? I wish this thing told me like exactly who everybody was, then I wouldn't have to ask y'all a question. But in my travels and everything that I've learned, and of course I'm always learning something new. Actually, I went back and one of the things I did to study and get ready for this video. Oh, you in Texas? Shit, I know you hot as hell. Unless you way up in North Texas. But one of the things that I was doing to study to get ready for this, I went back and I found a video that I did about Josephus not being credible, a credible person to formulate the idea of a historical Jesus. I went back and I looked at that video. I made this video 5 years ago. And I don't know, see, I was looking at it and I was like, ooh, I've aged, but not too bad. But I was looking at that video yesterday. And this is the beauty of having an open mind, is that although I made a video 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, there were a couple of points in that video that I have learned a bit more about, that my understanding of has become deeper. When you're so stuck on something that you can't learn something new, you have a problem. And definitely 5 years ago, there was a few comments that I made in that video that I will not make in this one. I will actually correct in this video, that I will say differently in this video. So even if you go back and you watch the video from 5 years ago about Josephus not being a credible source for a historical Jesus, you will notice some subtle differences in that video compared to how we're going to discuss things today. So in that vein, it's been about almost 5 minutes. It's about time to get started, where we're going to talk about why we should stop saying Constantine. How you doing, Ingalls? Felipe and Morris, how y'all doing? One of the things that people and I've corrected people on this throughout the time frame that I've been on YouTube. Anytime I'm in a debate, if someone is of the conscious community, and they say that Constantine created Christianity, that Christianity was created at the Nicene Council, I've always been one to correct that misunderstanding, because no matter, even if you are within a similar community, there is always room for disagreement, because disagreement provides growth. And one of those things is that the onslaught of people that like to say that Constantine and the Council of Nicaea created Christianity. Ooh, I'm knocking stuff down. And that is actually very far from the truth of actual history. And we are going to take some time, as I get this dang microphone right, we're going to take some time today to break that down, because it's okay. Some people think that if you're ever wrong, it destroys all your credibility, but that's not necessarily true. Even the most brilliant person comes in need of correction from time to time. So there's nothing wrong with being wrong about something, to say something incorrectly. I know I'm messing with this microphone as well, because we're only human. Well, I shouldn't say that, y'all. I'm not human, but we're finite, put it that way. We're finite in our mind, but infinite in our being. What's up, Britt Atwater? So there is the popular misconception that because of the Council of Nicaea, because of the Edict of Milan and the Council of Nicaea, that Constantine created Christianity and the Council of Nicaea created Christianity and canonized the Bible. They didn't. Constantine just legalized Christianity, and then he organized Christianity. He did not create it. Then the canonization of the Bible, the process began at the Council of Nicaea, because there was another like 65 or 45 years or so before it was actually canonized. So then, where did Christianity start would be the question. Where did it start? Peace, David. Well, to understand that, you have to understand what was going on in the Roman Empire, in Judea, during the time of Nero. See, the first big thing that we have to understand is that the emperor's job in the Roman Empire is to maintain the empire. That's it. Maintain the empire. That's your main job, by whatever means necessary. So you have this guy Nero, and most of you guys know who Nero is. You've heard of Nero. He's the one who burned down Rome, but blamed it on the Christians. Supposedly he was this huge persecutor of Christians. Christians. He also was the guy who, he didn't fiddle on the roof. That's a myth that they made up. He was actually in his own town. He actually was organizing people to save houses and things like that during the time frame of the Great Fire of Rome. But he did start the damn fire because he wanted to build a new palace. He spent a lot of money. He lavished himself with different gifts and exotic things. The Senate and the people did not like Nero. He was the last of the Julio-Claudians to rule Rome. The Julio-Claudians are the ones who, from Julius Caesar to Claudius and on up to Nero, that's that bloodline of hierarchy in their heredity. So Nero was having problems with the fact that the Jewish people were causing uprisings throughout the Roman Empire. Now, it wasn't just the Jewish people. The Druids were also causing uprising up in Britannia, and which is Britain. That's where Nero's favorite general, Vespasian, the number one general in the Roman Empire at the time frame, he's up in Britannia, him and his son Titus, and they conquered the Druid people. The way that they conquered the Druid people was to take away their story from them, their history from them. That part sounds familiar, right? You want to conquer a people, take their history. So he took their history, destroyed their history. That's why if you see anybody nowadays walking around talking I got some Druid runes that I'm using for magic, or I got Druid tattoos, the shit's made up. because he left absolutely nothing. There's zero Druid documentation prior to the Roman government. All of it was destroyed. All of it was lost. They've taken other people in the area's ruins and have said that this must be similar to Druid, because the Druids must have had something similar to that, which is viable to a certain degree, but it's not exact. So, but that's how so I want you to understand that, because that's how Vespasian operated. Vespasian came in and he cleared house. He understood how to defeat people, not just on the battlefield, but in the mind, and how to defeat them, for generations. So you got the Jewish people, they're having problems with Rome, being a vassal of Rome. You see, to the Romans, they worked 7 days a week, but to the Jewish people, they need to have a Sabbath day off. And the Romans considered this to be lazy, that they were doing it out of laziness, not out of a religious worship, because the Romans don't care or don't force religion on anybody. They let you have your religion. That's fine. Just make sure that you become a good Roman citizen is what they care about. So they found the Jewish people to be lazy in the fact that they think they don't have to work on a set. They need a day off every week. And the Roman, they only took days off. Yeah, this thing is getting on my nerves. They only took days off on holidays. I am fighting this damn microphone. Anyway, they only took days off on holidays. And because the Jewish people want to take a day off every week, the Romans didn't like that. They didn't like that nonsense. So they had a problem with them. Just like the inconsiderate pagan holidays, because it's easier to take over holidays than to make them. Yeah, it is. He didn't start it, but the KVJ is basically his invention. The KVJ is way after Constantine. You're talking about King James. Constantine, you would have been looking at the it's falling out my head. Not the Sinaiticus, or the stuff with a V. Which the KVJ is based off of the Sinaiticus. No, the Septuagint. That's the Greek that's the Greek from the Old Testament, from the time of Alexander and Ptolemy. Why do I want to say Vaticus? But it's not Vaticus. But it starts with a V. Is of the time frame of Constantine. So we was talking about the fact of how Vespasian, right? But it's a combination of the Septuagint and the V something, and then he added things and changed some things as well. So there are some differences. Still jacked up no matter how you slice it. So we can agree on that part. So you get your guy here, Vespasian. Nero is like, look, the biggest issue that they have with the Jewish people is that the Romans don't care if you have your own holidays, don't care if you have your own religion, worship whatever God. They were very henotheistic. Their biggest deal was place a statue of Caesar in your synagogue, in your temples, and only once a year do you have to pay tribute, offer a sacrifice to Caesar. Well, of course, the Jewish people, they have in their 10 Commandments, in their law, thou shalt not make any graven images of anything on heaven or in earth, in the sea, on the ground. You can't bow down to any false images. Don't give into false images. Don't pray to other people's deities, so on and so forth. You know, they have all of those rules within their religion. So, of course, the Romans wanting to establish a statue of Caesar in their synagogue is an offense. So therefore, that creates tension. That tension turns into fighting. That fighting turns into destabilization of trade. That destabilization of trade turns into a destabilization of the money. Boy, what is going on? You know what? Some Christian person probably like, oh, see, that's God saying that you ain't supposed to be talking about him. Actually, that's me just not wanting to use the whole table. But we gonna use more of the table. All right, you got me good there, YouTube? You hear me good? You hear me well? Hear me good. That's some jacked up English. So, and the devil is busy. See, I would go with Andrew and like, the devil is busy trying to stop me from getting out this information so that people still stay conditioned under Christianity. That's how I would translate this microphone falling if I was using something like that. But I'm just going to translate it as I set it up wrong, and that's why I kept falling. Cause and effect. So now, the Jewish people were not going to allow these temples. They're not doing that. So this is called, so that destabilization goes all the way up through trade. And once you start messing with the money, the Romans ain't having that. They're having problems. So the Senate tells Nero that you have to shut this revolt down. You have to shut down these Jewish people, because the Jewish people are spread out all over the Levant, in the Roman Empire, you know, in Rome, some in Europe, in North Africa. So they're spread out. So these disruptions are a little bit of everywhere. Well, in order to do this, who do you call? Ghostbusters. No, you call your number one general who just whooped the Druids' butt. So he calls Vespasian in. Vespasian comes down, him and his son Titus, they come to Judea. The land area is called Judea by the Romans. So he comes to Judea. When he gets to Judea, he's like, all right, see what we got here. Now, Vespasian does know that the Senate and the people are really, really tired of Nero, right? Really tired of Nero. And in that, he knows that if he succeeds, that there could be a change of power. So he goes in. The first battle that they have is at the Sea of Galilee, the Battle of Galilee. Now, who does he face off? Well, he faces off against Josephus, the same Josephus that most people only think of as a historian. Well, Josephus was also a Sadducee, right? He was a Sadducee or a Pharisee, but I didn't think he was a Sadducee. Josephus, one of the reasons why he was in charge of the Galilean forces is, well, he was a zealot, because the zealots were actively fighting the wars. So he was a zealot, but I think he also was a Sadducee. One of the reasons why Josephus was placed in position of power is because about 12, 15 years earlier, Josephus and another group of Jewish people they went to Rome to negotiate with Nero to release some poets, right? There was about 40 different poets, Jewish poets, that they wanted released, and they went to Rome to negotiate. So they thinking he knows the Roman mind. And it wasn't uncommon for your religious leaders or historians it wasn't uncommon for religious leaders to also be historians. It wasn't uncommon for religious leaders to also be military leaders. Usually those things go hand in hand in most civilizations back in those days anyway. So here is Josephus. He's getting ready to fight against Vespasian and Titus at the Sea of Galilee. Well, they have this battle. Josephus and his forces get mollywopped, right? to the point where only 40 of them jokers are left over. Those 40 are hidden in a cave, and while they're hidden in a cave, Josephus is like, look, he convinces everybody, we cannot become slaves to the Romans, objects of their victory, because the Romans love to show off in their victory, carry the victory, build monuments to their victory. We cannot be that. So they commit suicide, but it's a weird suicide. They draw straws, literally, they draw straws. And whoever draws the shortest straw kills everybody else and then suicides themselves. That way, everybody else didn't commit suicide, only the one person committed suicide, right? So everybody else didn't commit some form of a sin, only the one person committed a sin, but they did it in like a jihadist kind of way. So it's not too bad. Amazingly, Josephus pulls the smallest straw. So he offs off his other guys. But in true survivalist punkism, Josephus gives himself over to the Romans. He surrenders to Titus and Vespasian. Well, in that surrender, he being, in prison while they are in camp, moving around, getting ready to launch other attacks and launching other attacks, Josephus is listening to everything that's going on in the Roman camp. He's finding out that Nero could possibly be disposed of, and Vespasian is the number one general, and generally military people are the ones that get promoted to leadership, to emperor. I mean, it started with Julius Caesar. Well, it started with Romulus and his brother. So it's been a part of the Roman ethos forever. And it was the same thing with other civilizations as well around the world. So it's a normal thing. Being the number one general, they're going to dispose the emperor. You're going to be the guy, next guy up. Josephus, being a Sadducee, knows the Jewish literature. What he also knows is that Romans, even though they hate the Greeks, they envy the antiquity of the Greeks, and anything they can have of antiquity and anything they can have of prophecy, the Romans utilize that to lift up who they are. So Josephus tells Vespasian that there is a Jewish story of a Messiah that comes out of Israel and becomes a world leader. And that Jewish Messiah will be like the son of is God, right? So there's two reasons why this appeals to Vespasian. One, it gives him a prophecy that he is rightfully to become the Roman emperor, right? Two, it is something that can be used to deify Vespasian and his son Titus. Deification in the imperial religion of Rome was very important. Any Roman emperor must find something within their history, doesn't matter what culture it comes from, that deifies them as a god. Them performing miracles and things like that. I'm going to get to that with Vespasian in a minute. Those kinds of things deify you. You become the leader of the imperial religion. The imperial religion is only for the top rich people, is only for the Senate, all of them. That's it. And nobody else is part of the imperial religion. The poor people, the regular people, you're not part of the imperial religion. Remember that for later on, right? Remember that. When we get to Constantine, remember that. So that's one of the main reasons. That's one reason why it was appealing to him. Well, as it happens to be, after a couple more battles, and Josephus providing good intel on the Jewish story and how to defeat the Jewish forces, Nero is disposed of, and Vespasian is recalled to Rome. He leaves Titus in charge, and he appoints Vespasian to be Titus's scribe. That's why the annals of Titus are written by Josephus. Are written by Josephus. So he left Josephus to be his scribe. Little sidetrack. Vespasian, before he goes directly to Rome, he goes down to Egypt because he needs to shut some stuff down in Egypt and handle a few things in Egypt. And they told him, go to Egypt first, handle some things. Then you can come up to Rome and we'll make you emperor, right? So when he goes to Egypt, a little sidetrack here, because you need I just said, you need these miracles, you need these prophecies to become a god. hold on. Why do you think Constantine adopted Christianity? Constantine never became Christian. Constantine had never became Christian. They baptized Constantine after he died. Constantine worshipped Apollo and Mithra. He never became Christian. But sidetrack, while he's over in Egypt, it is recorded in Roman annals, as well as the historian Tacitus, which Tacitus wasn't present. He's just writing what other people said. It is claimed that Vespasian, a man came to two people were told that one person with a gimp hand and another person who was blind, that if you go and see the emperor, well, they had a vision from Serapis. Serapis, which you know is Ptolemy, is Ptolemy, and people like to say Serapis is Ptolemy and Jesus. No, it wasn't Ptolemy and Jesus, because Jesus wasn't even a character before when Ptolemy was in Egypt, right? It is more likely that it is Ptolemy and Horus, and then later it is matched up with Jesus by some other people. But during the time frame of the Romans, it would not have been Jesus and Ptolemy. It would have been Ptolemy and more than likely Horus, which Horus has similarities to Jesus. So Serapis comes to these two gentlemen, tell them, go see the emperor, he'll heal you. One dude is blind. Vespasian spits on the ground in some mud and put it on the man's eyes, and then blows in his eyes, and the man can see. The other dude, he's got a jacked up limb. He steps on the guy's jacked up hand, and his hand is healed. So he healed the lame and he healed the blind. Those things sound familiar, right? Heard that before, I know. So now, after that, he does go to Rome, and then he's coronated as the emperor, and he has this Jewish story to back him up, to say that it was prophesied for him to become the emperor, which further solidifies him becoming the emperor of Rome. Now, we still ain't got to the Josephus part of it all. But we're entering now into Josephus and his plan with Titus. Now, as Josephus and Titus are going around through Judea and they are conquering, Josephus is writing the annals of Titus. In writing these annals, he is demonstrating how Titus surrounds Jerusalem and he builds a watchtower. The Bible talks about Jesus talking about having a watchtower. He pulls up all the fig trees. So, because when you're doing a siege, you surround the city, you pull up all the food, and once they run out of the food on the interior and they become weak, that's when you attack, or they will surrender because they know that they're going to get massacred at that point. So he pulls up all the fruit trees around Jerusalem, and you got the story of Jesus saying, rip up this fruit tree if it doesn't produce fruit, even though it was out of season. If they really wanted to make that story into a miracle, they should have said, hey, produce this fruit during the season. Well, produce fruit out of season. But that's not what they do, right? So I was going to look something up for you guys later on, but this other phone is not acting right. So there are so many similar stories between those two people. Now, as we continue, he also came into Jerusalem under all this fanfare, with palm leaves being placed before him as he came into the city. This is what happened to Titus. Same thing. He also tore down the temple down to the smaller, to no brick or stone was standing on top of another. This was also something that Jesus said. When they were fighting near the water, first time in Galilee, and the people were trying to come out of the water, the Jewish forces was coming out of the water, the Roman soldiers were told by Titus to cast your spears at them while they're trying to come out of the water, because they're easier targets at that time frame. And he said in the annals, it says, I will make you fishers of men, because they spearfishing the people coming out of the water. These annals of Titus are called gospels, or in evangelicons, because they are good tidings of wartime victory. So when somebody says evangelical, it comes from evangelion, which is good tidings of military victory. That's what these annals were. They were talking about Titus's victories over the Jewish people, over the Hebrew people, the people in Judea. And these stories are going to become some of the storylines for Jesus. And I'm gonna tell you why they do this switch in a few minutes here. So Josephus is his right-hand man, tells them the story, how to break the story down. Now Vespasian has become the emperor. He summoned, after the revolts have been put down, he summons Titus and Josephus to return to Rome. When they return to Rome, Vespasian had ordered every copy of the Jewish story to be taken and burned, except for one copy. And that one copy was brought to Rome and placed in Vespasian's library. This is why the Dead Sea Scrolls were stored in a storehouse in the caves, because they had to hide it in order to not have it burned by Vespasian before Titus left. So when they get to Rome, Vespasian understands that the way that we got to quell this story, he's already been made emperor. He's already been deified. Titus has been deified as the son of God. So they've already got what they need out of this situation, They've gotten their prophecy. So they really don't have a need for Judaism, for the Jewish story anymore, other than one reason, one very important reason, right? One very important reason. I already seen the movie. I gotta watch it again so I can dissect it. Talking about Guardians of the Galaxy 3. One very important reason. That reason is, as long as the Jewish story is allowed to continue of a warring Masonic figure coming out of Israel, then the Roman Empire will always have to deal with the Jewish people fighting against Rome. So what do? They take the annals of Titus and the Jewish story, and since they have all the known copies of the Torah, the Tanakh, they began a campaign of rewriting Judaism into a more docile version of a religion. You see, one of the other things that Josephus had written about during his time frame was that there were 4 different Jesus-like characters. There were 4 other known Jesus-like characters in the Jewish story. You have a Jesus who was beaten by a different governor, and that governor, I think his name starts with a U. That governor, and sometimes I say stuff like that, it starts with a U because I want you guys to go look it up. It starts with a Q. Sorry, not a U. It starts with a Q. And that governor released him. He released Yeshua. There's another story of a different Yeshua who flips the tables, but that Yeshua got different family members, different brothers and sisters. There are 4 different Yeshuas. So I want you guys to go research that. There's 4 different Yeshuas that Josephus talks about, who are all in a state of rebellion towards the Jewish people getting back into harmony with their God, but also some who want to fight. Because you didn't have this unified force. You had the Zealots, you had the Sadducees, the Pharisees, you had the Koinons, you had different types of Hebrew people that were thinking they should be in charge and they should kick Rome out. You also had the problem of Herod. He was a Hellenistic Jew. So he was a Hellenistic Jew. So he sided with Rome. He was a puppet king. You also have Philo of Alexander in Egypt. Philo of Alexander, very prominent family, one of the richest families in all of the Roman Empire. They were the tax collectors for the state of Rome, for the Empire of Rome in Egypt. So they were an incredibly wealthy family, but they were also Hellenistic Jews. As a matter of fact, Philo's sister Beatrice goes off and I think she marries Herod. She becomes one of Herod's wives, or they at least had a relationship. But then at the same time, she's the mistress of Titus. These people are all connected together, you know. Now, Josephus is tasked now with the beginnings of writing a story that makes that gives the Jewish people a more docile story, a story that their Messiah has already come. There's no need for Titus, which isn't it interesting that there are two books in the Bible named Titus, and most scholars today agree that neither one of those books were written by Paul. They don't know who the author of the books of Titus are. But is it not interesting that they began this campaign to create this messianic, the Messiah has come story? You see, because the Romans, especially the Vespasian, had a good habit of backdating information. Right? Backdating information is not uncommon. To the degree of this, why would Vespasian want to, if everything that happened with Vespasian and his son started in around 64 BCE, 64 CE, why backdate the story prior to him? Smear campaign. Smear campaign. We see this in our own civilizations today. We smear the former president. Whichever president is the former president, the opposition still smears that president after their presidency. They were the worst president ever. You know, Trump was the worst president ever. Obama was the worst president ever. Bush was the worst president ever. You know, Clinton was the worst president ever. In a little while, Biden gonna be the worst president ever. There's always a smear campaign against the previous regime. Since they just went from the Julio-Claudian dynasty to the beginning of the Flavian dynasty, the smear campaign now must be put on Nero. So the information is backdated as the story developed, because how do we want Nero to look as bad as we possibly can look? We're going to say that Nero blamed the fire in Rome on Christians. There were no such thing as Christians during the actual time of Nero. This was all a smear campaign by Vespasian, by backdating the story. People didn't believe in a Jesus because there was no Jesus. Josephus was born in and around 37 BCE. Never heard of Jesus. Didn't know Jesus. There were no stories of Jesus. Only as he was growing up, he recorded the 4 different Yeshuas who had taken issue with Rome during his time. This is why there are so many time and dates that don't match up in the Bible. For instance, the whole birth of Jesus could not have happened when it supposedly happened, because Herod was already dead. By the time when Pontius Pilate comes down to, I think it's Pilate, comes down to do a head count of the people, he's coming to do the head count because Herod, he needs to put Herod's estate in order. Herod is already dead before Jesus is born. So the whole going to Egypt and coming back after Herod, no, it's a lie. Which is why the other story talks about Jesus just going off to Nazareth. It's a lie. It's just a pure, bold-faced political lie, because Nero must be smeared. And a small community of Christians that nobody really ever heard of, who's going to defend that? And one, if you go against the emperor, you're gonna get murder, death, killed. You get murder, death, killed. Go against the emperor. They don't play that back then. We can talk shit about the president all day, as long as you don't threaten his life. But back then, you couldn't talk shit. We can call a president a liar, a thief, a bastard, that MF, everything under the book. But back in those days, if you call the emperor a liar, you better damn well have solid proof that will be backed up, and it better be a big goddamn lie at that. So nobody's going to challenge this. Nobody's going to challenge this. So blaming Nero for the fire, for burning, saying he was burning Christians and he accused Christians, makes him look bad. Saying that Nero, this docile Messiah guy, was just going around, didn't do the worst thing he did was flip some tables, but he fed people, he did all this stuff, and Nero killed him. Nero killed him. He died under Nero's reign. Having the mark of the beast, the number 6, and really sometimes it's 616, but 666, as we commonly call it. But I was doing some research, and some of the research makes, I think it might be 616. I'm not sure. I got to finish the research. But either way, coming out to be the name of Nero, saying that Nero will be the one that will come, and there will be 2 in the field, and one will be taken and the other one will not. That's all geared towards Nero. The Revelations has nothing to do with us today. That's all geared towards that time frame. It was Roman propaganda to smear Nero's name, the Julio Claudian's name, and to make themselves look better. Because, like I said, those other Jesuses, they did their stuff way in like the 50s, like in the 50s. They weren't doing their stuff in 33 BCE and 30 BCE to 33 BCE. They weren't doing it. I mean CE. They weren't doing that then. So the Christian story is now free game. They can take it away from it having a meaning towards Vespasian and Titus, because Josephus lives to right up into about 100 CE. They can now change this story, and with the help of Philo of Alexander and Herod, in Judea, the next Herod in Judea. Well, Herod was already after the rest of them jokers who took over after him. But with Philo's help, they were able to recreate this story to make a docile version of Judaism. And that docile version of Judaism then became known as Christians. But you don't get this until after 70 AD. And they were this little growing group. This is why it is not until 120, in around 112, that Tacitus sends a letter, because Tacitus was a governor in Syria, sends a letter to Pliny the Younger saying, hey, man, what am I supposed to do with these Christians? He really didn't know these people, didn't understand these people, didn't have a lot of knowledge about these people, because they were brand spanking new. They were a new religion that just sparked up 20, 30 years ago, based on the beginnings of the creation of a story from Vespasian, from Josephus. And I honestly believe that Josephus is Paul. Because now all the stories, and if you look at the New Testament, especially the Paulinian stories, they are very much Josephus's story to a certain degree, and they are pro-Roman like a champ. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Obey all the laws of the government that you were born under. Whatever government you was born under is the one that God put you under. You know, so people born in totalitarian states and to dictatorships that are evil and cruel, God wanted them to be born under that regime, right? So they start writing all of these things. Titus, just like Paul, Josephus, just like Paul, went to Rome, spent a lot of time in Rome, talked about Rome. This is right. Why is somebody ringing my doorbell? Amazon just normally put the stuff down and keep it moving. So anyway, made me lose my train of thought right there. So notice that, what is the guy's name who gives Jesus his tomb? Joseph of Arimathea, right? Joseph ben Mathia. That's what Joseph's original name is, Joseph ben Mathia. Once he comes to Rome, he's given an apartment in Rome. They give him a Jewish wife. He don't like her, so they get rid of her, and then they get him a Hellenistic Jewish wife, and that's the one he pop off some kids with. But Josephus ben Matthias changes his name to Josephus Flavius. He becomes an adopted son of the Flavian dynasty. But he kept himself in history with his annals, but also within the Bible by writing Joseph Arimathea, because he is Joseph ben Matthias. It's too similar. It could just be coincidence, but it's similar enough to make you just pause for a second and give thought to it. But this backdating has to be done to smear him. And now you get the continuous writings as it flows through Josephus's life, and then with Philo of Alexander. After about 40 years, you have priests and ministers. You have other people who are starting to write these stories. This is why you see the stories of John and whatnot created, because they're basing these stories on what they got from Josephus, the miracles of Vespasian, and the literature starts to evolve over like the next 100 years, up until like the years of 200 and 300. That's why some of these books are written that's why some of these gospels, so-called gospels, are written so late, and they're stacked on top of the mythological possible book, the Qlm, and the book of Mark. Mark is really just Josephus's writings. The letters of Paul are really just Josephus's writings, and Philo of Alexander's writings. So Christianity started with Vespasian and his conquering of Judea, but his conquering of the mind of the people of Judea with the help of his son Titus, Josephus as a primary, and then you have Philo of Alexander. After that, it became its own animal. The Romans didn't really care about it. There was so many cult religions all over the place. They didn't give any attention to these Christians, but they still wind up having some of the same problems with the Christians. The Christians, because they're adopting this Tanakh, still don't want to put a statue of Caesar, right, in their temple. They still don't want that statue of Caesar in their temple. So they're still having problems. So other Roman rulers did persecute them because they still were acting like the Jewish people, but they weren't fighting against Rome because they weren't looking for a warlike messianic leader. They believed they were looking for heaven in the sky and all this kind of stuff, and that this Jesus was going to return. But they believed that Jesus was going to return before they died, because that's what Paul wrote. That's what Josephus wrote, aka Paul. Well, Paul, aka Josephus. That's what they wrote, that he would come back before this generation passes away. And each generation thought that they were the generation, just like each generation today think they are the generation. Every generation thinks they are the generation, but they're not. So we get all the way up to Constantine. Constantine, the Roman Empire, they had bigger fish to fry. The Roman Empire splits, and then there's the big fight to get it back. You got Maxentius in the east, and you got Constantine in the west. They fight at the the Moldavian Bridge. They fight at the Moldavian Bridge. Maxentius is defeated at that bridge, at that battle. Constantine becomes the new emperor of Rome. Rome is put back together, but the first problem he has, 13 years later, he's having a problem with these Christians. Now, mind you, Constantine had Christians in his military. If you ever had to get a chance to go to England, go to Hadrian's Wall. When you go to Hadrian's Wall, they have near there's a Roman temple. First, it's an encampment. Then there's a Roman temple there's a couple of Roman temples that were part of Constantine's army. There were the worship of Mithra, the worship of Apollo. Those were for the officers and the higher officers. And then there were some Christians. They found a Christian temple, right? So he had Christians in his army, but they were Orthodox Christians. These were Roman Christians. Maxentius had more of the Levant Christians, the Middle Eastern Christians in his army. So this is one of the reasons why Constantine sided with the Orthodox Christians, because they were good Roman citizens. They fought in Roman wars. They served in the military, right? And they served under him. So after this defeat, Constantine, in the first recording of his vision that he saw in the sky, in this symbol you shall conquer, he just saw the sun. What he saw, and he was visited by Sol Invictus in his tent. This is why at the meeting in Milan, he said, your Jesus is similar to my Sol Invictus. And he related the story of seeing the symbol, and they painted on the shields the symbol, and Jesus visited him in the room and all that stuff. When the battle happened, and Eusebius of Caesarea recorded the battle, he said nothing of a vision, nothing of painting shields, nothing of a symbol, nothing of a visitation in his tent. Then when Constantine tells this story in 318 in Milan, that's when Eusebius of Caesarea actually records seeing the symbol, painting it on the shields, and then being visited in his tent. That's the first time the story is actually told. Constantine made that shit up. Constantine made it up in order to show to find a bridge, a commonality with the Christians. Because the next mission that he had for the Christian was going to be a big mission. And that is to consolidate and control Christianity, because Christians were fighting other Christians throughout the Roman Empire, especially in Egypt, right? Egypt was a big battleground, but Egypt was also a big money pit. Not a money pit. That was a big money earner for the Roman Empire. So we got to his adopted great grandfather dealt with the Jewish uprising. Now I'm dealing with the Christian uprising. He made a new religion for the Jewish people to calm them down. They ain't calm yet. So let me organize them and state sponsor them, make them legal and state sponsor them. So that's what the Nicene Council was about. It was about the state. Well, the Edict of Milan was about making it legal to be Christian. The Council of Nicaea was about organizing Christianity under one creed, one rule, and state sponsoring Christianity, because then Christianity became hugely state sponsored throughout the Roman Empire. Because the Gnostics were having problems with the Orthodox. The Essenes were having problems with the Orthodox. Everybody was having problems with each other. You can have, just like today, you got Baptist, Methodist, Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah Witness, all the different types of Protestantism, the AME, the Catholics, the Orthodox, the Abyssinians. Imagine all of these people under the same government, or how we are here in America, but imagine them fighting each other over this belief. They weren't in a time frame like how we are today, where we'll have conversations, we'll debate. We may even get mad to a certain degree. But to them back then, when they became angry, they lashed out violently. Rome was a very violent culture. Violence was very well accepted, much more so than it is in our culture today. So if you had two preachers on two different corners near each other preaching, and they got into an argument, it usually resulted in the groups battling each other, fighting each other. That was how religion was back in the day, right? So Constantine had to shut that shit down. And to shut it down, he organized Christianity under what became the Catholic Church. He created a pope. They authenticated and gave antiquity to being popes by claiming and calling Peter was the first pope, simply because of whoever wrote, when it was written that upon this rock I will build my church. It wasn't on Peter. It was on what he said, not Peter. But they took that to their advantage and made Peter the first pope to give the office of the papacy authenticity, even though They are much more of a Paulinian style Christianity than they are Jesus style Christianity, because there's very distinct differences between the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Paul. In my tithes video yesterday, I demonstrated some of those, of how Jesus and Paul looked at tithing very differently. Very, very differently. So yeah, so the beginnings of Christianity did not start. Christianity was not created by Constantine. Stop saying that. It was created by Vespasian and Josephus. Well, it was created by Vespasian, Josephus, and Philo of Alexander. Those are your main culprits, with Josephus being the primary. And he took the stories of Titus, the story of Vespasian, the story of the other four Jesuses, and made them into the book that we call the Book of Mark. And that began the Christian religion. Christianity began in and around 80 AD. 70 to 80 AD is when it began, with those creations of those writings. And then it was disseminated. The Roman roads made dissemination of information easier. So that information was disseminated, forced upon people, and well, it was forced upon the Hebrew people to try to shut down the Jewish revolts, so that they can believe that their Messiah had come, and that Messiah will take them into that the kingdom of God is in heaven, is after. It's not now. The Messiah is here to bring you into a spiritual kingdom, not a physical kingdom. And if the people believe that it's a spiritual kingdom, not a physical kingdom, then they will be good citizens. If they believe that, then they will follow the rules of the laws of Rome, and so on and so forth. And then the other books are written after that with the legendizing of the Jesus character. You know, the miracles become bigger and bigger. You go from feeding 4,000 to 6,000. You know, you go from having 4 or 5 miracles to having like 12 miracles. You know, if all these guys were hanging around each other, shouldn't they all have recorded the same damn miracles? Or at least close in number. You know, maybe John was over, having a sandwich when he healed a blind man, so he might have missed that one. Or maybe, well, it'd be reversed. Mark was having a sandwich. Wow. And John them saw the other part. But and I want you to think about something. People may say, well, that's just far-fetched. I mean, you're going to just force people and people just going to change religions on. If it's based, one, you base it on the previous religion. Look how big David Koresh built a religion. Look how Protestantism was built. Look at how Seventh-day Adventists was built out of a little white lady. I mean, her name is a little white lady, and her last name is White. Little white lady having some visions, and she started a whole religion. And look how big Seventh-day Adventists is. Look how big Jehovah's Witnesses have become off of 2 dudes who really created a religion because they wanted to sell some books. Look how Scientology has become such a huge religion with these massive ass buildings. And it was because L. Ron Hubbard said the fastest way to become rich is to start a religion. Look at how the Mormons control an entire state and grew and is huge simply because this dude didn't want to get persecuted for pedophilia and having multiple wives. I'm talking about Joseph Smith. So to say that back then, I mean, I'm talking about things that we've done today in more modern times. Back then, when it was easier for you to kill somebody, when there was more threat against your life by the government, where you had less freedoms, much easier to start a brand new religion, especially when you got something to base it off of. All you need is one good charismatic speaker and one good story, and you're off to the races. You're off to the races. Now, let me see if I missed anybody's comment. But yeah, Constantine never adopted Christianity. Constantine, that I went to different cities in Rome, different cities in Italy, and Constantine has always been a worshiper of Mithra and Apollo. primarily Apollo. Even to his death, he worshiped Apollo. Now, his mother became Christian. And so on when he died, after he had died, she had the Pope of that day baptize him into Christianity. And his mother she was a big proponent of it. And if it wasn't for her, it probably wouldn't have got as big as it did, because she gave a lot of money to change temples, older temples, into Christian churches. And she began that whole saint this and saint that. And many of the people who were political powerhouses, and other people who were involved, like Beatrice, she was given into sainthood. His mother was into sainthood. All these people began to become saints. And it was really because Constantine's mom believed she went in on Christianity, and she funded a lot of their growth. Without her, it doesn't grow to be what it is. But Constantine was never Christian. I saw something about 3 revolutions in that area. Wait a minute, hold on. My eyeballs it. Can't read that. I saw something about 3 revolutions in that area. One was Johnstown, and they say that he's a leader of that. The leader of that was killed and left dead on the rocks. Was said to be the story of Jesus. I don't know about that one. 3 revolutions in that area. One was Johnstown. Oh, you talking about? I'm thinking Johnstown, like one word, like that's the name of the town, but the town that John was from. Well, think about it. I don't think John never existed. John was just somebody added to the story. 4 different types of Jesuses. Yep. If you do a search for Josephus and 4 Jesuses, you should be able to pull up the information on the 4 Jesuses that Josephus was talking about. Oh, and as far as Josephus, his them saying that he wrote this thing and said that, and then there was a shepherd, and if there was a shepherd, and if he was a man, he wasn't a man, he was the Christ, and all that kind of stuff. That has been proven to be a forgery by the Catholic Church, written about 300 years after Josephus died. But that's not a valid story. That's not a valid writing. Let me see if I can find it really. Because when you first do a search, you will get a lot of Christian oriented stuff. So sometimes you have to dig. You can't just go with what you initially find. And it's best if you find something that was written or studied by a scholar or somebody who was who teaches at like a religious study school, not a seminary, but religious study. But the Testimonium Flavianus, I think is what it's called. Yeah, this is the forgery. It says, and then there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if indeed it necessary to call him a man, for he was a doer of paradoxical work, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure, and many Jews on the one hand, and also many of the Greeks on the other hand, drew to him. He was the Messiah, right? And when on accusation of some of the principal men among us, Pilate had condemned him to the cross, those who had first loved him did not cease to do so. For he appeared to them on the 3rd day, living again, a divine prophet, having related both these things and countless other marvels about him, and even unto the tribes of the Christians, it would say Christians, also named from him. All right. That is a forgery. And Josephus was a devout Jew until his death. He would have never called him, validated him as the Messiah. All right. So he wouldn't declare him a Messiah and then attest to it, him rising on the third day and that sort of thing, because that's not what he believed the Messiah would do. And then it doesn't fit. Like when you're reading above and below it, it doesn't fit. It looks like something that was added. The language is not in the same style that he wrote in. It would have been like he wrote it, went away for some years, come back, write. Well, he was writing, went away from some years, come back, write that, and he's gotten into a different style. Then he reverted after that passage. He reverted back to his old style. I'm trying to find where it talks about him. Where he talks about multiple Jesuses. But I can go back to YouTube, make sure nobody asks anything or say anything. I always found it odd. I never seen biblical references in history books in school, or maybe I skipped those days. I don't know. That's because the Bible has very little history in it. Authentic history. It has very little authentic history uh, in the Bible. So you're not going to find that. You wouldn't have got that in school. And people don't ask them they know that if they put that to the test, whew, they would not. They know they will fail. It will. Now, was was this information new to anybody? Was this new to anybody? You know what? Let me do it this way. I know. Ooh. See, you have to. I read the complete works of Josephus, like the entire thing, a while back. So everything on first page is definitely going to give you all this stuff that is Christian apologetics, and that is going to be skewed in one direction or the other. Let's see if I can find a quick and easy way to find one of the stories of a Jesus story. Arguments from side. I wasn't planning on going into this part today, so that's why I didn't prepare this part today. Otherwise, I would have had this part prepared. All right, let's see. This part might be one of the parts. Nope, that's not. There is the mention of Jesus having a brother James, but that is not one of the ones I'm looking for. I'm gonna have to find this and do a whole nother video about it, where I just talk about the different ones. But there is one where it talks about Penn discusses the role of Ananias, and in the background of the passage to the passage, the state after that, the state thereafter being disposed as a high priest for killing James and being replaced by Jesus, son of Dynamis. So one of the Jesus he talks about is the son of Dynamis and not the son of Joseph. Um, So the Jesus that is the brother of James in one of the writings of Josephus is his father is Danius, not Danius, not Joseph. But he was a priest, and it was to bring both Anlinabus and Jesus and the son of Jesus, the son of Dynamis, so that his men could take care of the tithes and the older priests outside of Jerusalem. To this point, that some priests then starved to death. Uh, there's no reason to Philip Carrington states that there's no reason to question the authenticity of Joseph's passage on James and elaborate the background by stating that Amos continued to remain in power within the Jewish circles at the time, even after being disposed, and that it is likely that the charges brought against James by Ananias were not only because of his Christian association, but because he objected to the oppressive policies against the poor, hence explaining the later indignation and more moderate Jewish leaders. So in this instance, this Jesus is a different Jesus because he has a brother James, but they have a different father, and they were both priests. And James was the one who was killed, and not Jesus in that version of Jesus. Let me see if I can quickly search out another one. But I definitely want you guys to go research this for yourself. Uh, Not based on what I tell you. Because that would be too easy. All right. So let me get. I couldn't see anything that anybody was typing because I was on a different page. Uh, But what do you guys think? I'm curious as to what your thought processes are. So Brickwater says new to him. I always found it odd that I never seen the suicide part. Conic says nope, never see it. Willie said it's new to him. Are you going to make it a question? Shit, I don't know how to do that. I know that there's a way to do polls on Facebook. Let's see. Engage with your audience. Oh, look, start a poll. New shit. No, I didn't do that. I created a poll. Look at there. I'm learning stuff. I've heard a few different types of stories about Jesus that predates his story. Yeah, there are stories about, the whole thing about Vespasian and Josephus and other Jesus characters. They predate the creation of Christianity, but the story of Christianity was backdated to fit into the Julio-Claudian, into Nero's rule as propaganda towards Nero. How do you feel about Christian apologists? I feel like they are the super blind leading the blind. Because to be an apologist means that you have studied all these things and you know all these things. You studied counterpoints, but you studied those counterpoints already with a predetermined landing point. If you already have a predetermined landing point on anything that you study or anything that you voice opinion over, then that bias can supersede your ability to see things exactly how they are. Easy example. I do it in here all the time. We're watching the NBA playoffs. It doesn't matter what team I'm going for. When I look at the replay, if it's a foul, it's a foul. It's a flagrant, it's a flagrant. Even when my Hawks are playing and my Falcons are playing, I want to be biased. Now, I would quickly say, hey, that wasn't a foul, but I'll take it. That wasn't a penalty, but I'll take it. But I acknowledge that it wasn't a foul. It wasn't a penalty, and I've watched the game like, damn, my dude just traveled, but hey, they didn't call it. I'm fair because I don't have a predetermined landing point. I want my team to win, yes, but if my team does something wrong, I'm going to point out that did something wrong. Apologists can't do this. The first messed up thing, to become an apologist, you have to take an oath before you study that you already are going to validate everything in the Bible. So apologists to me are nothing but sycophants to the religion, and they're going to continue to say whatever the church has already determined, whatever doctrine already states. So I don't even get into debates with apologists anymore because they're not worth my time. I didn't know, boy, I can create polls on YouTube. Boy, I'm gonna start creating polls all the time now. Don't show me something new. Yes, I thought Constantine started Christianity. But once I researched and I found out the cross was made thousands of years before Jesus, I started questioning everything. Yeah, the cross was it was a tool. It was the crucifixion, crucifying people on a cross, been a tool of death. It was the stake or the cross. The steak was worse. They take that damn steak and they slide it up through your spine, and you just hang it from that. That was worse. I take a cross. Well, I don't know. You linger a lot longer on a cross. The steak, you ain't gonna last that long. Plus, once you rip that spine up, you know, your nerve endings after the first initial pain and shock, you might not feel nothing. You just pass out and you just die. You know, but I'm gonna take a steak before a cross. But yeah, it's been an old instrument of death. It predates the Romans. I think it predates the Greeks as well. I think you can find the cross all the way back into like Arcadian time frames. What about Barnabas Jesus or Barabbas? Now, you talking about the Barabbas Jesus in the Bible, or the Barabbas Jesus that's one of the Jesuses that Josephus talked about? And he was, I think, if I'm correct, he was more of a militaristic leader in trying to overthrow the Romans in Judea. Oh, do not have a predetermined landing point? You know, I don't. You know.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
How are you, sir?
All right.
I don't know, I got a delivery. Am I at the right place or?
What's the name of the business that you're looking for?
Saying smoke and cigar. And the address is.
That's me, but a delivery? I've never ordered anything from. I didn't order anything from here.
Let's see 1 second.
I didn't order any of this.
1 second, please. I want to check the address first.
No, dude,
So is the address, I mean, and what they call
5385 4 Strickland Road, Stone Mountain, Georgia.
It's 5414. I'm looking for 5414.
Oh, 5414.
Yeah,
and let me see, what's the name of it again?
He's saying smoke and cigar, but it's 5414. 543. You're not 5414.
No, that's probably across the.
Oh, all right.
You see over there where the Shell station is at?
Yeah, I know it, but I'm wondering, you know, that what they call the GPS took me.
Yeah, here. That happens.
But thank you very much.
Okay, all right. We sell cigars in here. I don't sell vapes and CBD shit. Just cigars up in this joint. See, that's why I normally lock my door. But it's 11:45, so I didn't know. I didn't even see him. Oh, there you go. But so anyway, yeah, I never have a predetermined landing point. Especially if I'm learning something. When you have a predetermined landing point, you can't openly try to understand and comprehend the information that's being shared with you at that point. My man Arrow, thank you for the donation on YouTube, Arrow. As he keep on calling it collection plate, he ain't gonna pass the plate. I always do appreciate when people donate to the channel. Actually, it's not so much about the money part of it. I did talk about that yesterday in my other video, the other live. It just, to me, it's just amazing to me when people freely do that. My main thing is, as I said yesterday, is, well, I only been at work for 10 minutes. I already got ash on my dang pants. My main thing is building the audience, you know, building the audience. Make YouTube and Meta pay me. But I'm never going to turn away y'all donations. We're not going to do that. I'll take those left and right. Because as James Jones knows, because he comes to the lounge, part of the plan is to be able to do this full time, to have all day to make multiple videos a day, do a live every day, then have some paid Zoom classes, counsel people, do counseling for people who need help adjusting from walking away from these religions. So on that subject matter, that's all I got. But we can talk about anything now, because until somebody shows up here, a customer, we're going to talk. Daniel, Solomon, and John the Baptist stories are like the story of Jesus. Yeah, they are. And you got to understand, you got Josephus writing these stories. Josephus was a Pharisee or a Sadducee. I think he was a Sadducee. He knew his Tanakh. He knew his Torah. So to formulate this story and knowing that he got to convert this story over to fit Jewish people and move them over from Judaism into this new, more docile form of Judaism, it had to be relatable. You know, he had to make it where this Jesus character would fit the prophesied Messiah. You know, so it had to fit Daniel. You know, it had to fit the wisdom of Solomon. It had to fit, you know, into everybody else's story. It had to fit Isaiah and all these other ones so that they can hopefully lead over to the next one. You notice he more than likely wrote Mark, but what he didn't do was do a genealogy. It was later done in Matthew and Luke. A genealogy was created, but even those two genealogies are different. They're not exactly the same. There's like some years missing and some people missing in the Matthew version. Coach, are more of our people leaving or going back to church, in your opinion? They are leaving, and leaving, and leaving, and leaving. Look, let me tell you, it's amazing to me. You got to understand. Take away the internet and just the people that I meet who come into my cigar lounge. It usually takes a little bit of time for it to be realized. But people I'm meeting more and more people who have walked away from Christianity and Islam and all the other religions. Like annually, without the internet, just in my everyday movements, I probably, and this I know is a small number, but I probably meet about 50 to 100 people who have decided to walk away. Right. And those 50 to 100 are meeting 50 to 100 or more. And they meeting all these people who have walked away from religion. More and more people are more and more Black people are getting into ancestry, going back to Native African religions, but they are walking away from Christianity because one big thing is they have access to information that they didn't have before. I'm having deja vu with that damn woodpecker. Y'all see that woodpecker? And I'm telling y'all about that woodpecker. And James is going to come in here today and say something about that damn woodpecker. Right? You're going to have a joke about that woodpecker. There's a deja vu moment. It's a glitch in the matrix. But more and more people are walking away from religion. And then you got people like myself who have raised their children to think independently for themselves. So none of my 3 children are Christian, right? And they're adults now and they don't date Christians. So it's unlikely when they have kids, those kids will be Christian, right? You know, I thought that I was going to have to be penalized. And every girl that I date or marry or whatever had to be Christian because I didn't have many options. But as it turns out, there are options. There are options out there. There's these, because I'm 51 rather. And I don't want to deal. Most of the people that I knew who were non-Christian, they were like in their 20s and 30s. I don't want to deal with no 20 or 31-year-old, 30-year-old. No, we don't have enough commonality. And then them jokers still want to have children. I'm done with that. But I'm finding more and more people my age who are non-Christian. So the numbers are growing. Right? Just alone on my TikTok page that I don't do lives on anymore, but on my TikTok page, I got almost 30,000 people follow me on that page. On YouTube, there's over 7,500 people. On Facebook, there's over 13,000 people. And then on Instagram, I don't really use that one as much. There's like 800 and something people. That's a lot of them. If you think about it, in a large number of the population, that's a small number of people. But that's a lot. That's still a lot of people who have walked away from this religion or don't agree with this religion. And I'm sure some of the people who follow me are Christian because they like to come on there and they want to debate and they want to have something to say. They feel like it's their duty to fight against me. But that's still a lot of people. That's enough people to start a small town. You know, it's enough people to start a small town. But more and more people are walking away, and I think we're going to see the demise of Christianity, or Christianity turn into something different in the next, 100 years. Christianity will be the first of the major three to become extinct. Islam will outgrow Christianity by, I think it's by 2040 or 2050, and that's based on birth rates, really. I didn't walk away, I ran. I walked. It took a long time, from 9 to 25, but I was a kid, so it was going to take a long time for that one. Okay. I believe that Jesus and the two thieves were revolutionary. I don't believe that Jesus on the cross never existed. That version of Jesus, that dude never existed. But the people that's given to, that might be those two might have been folks who were revolutionaries. Those who fought against them. But the two, they claim the two they were two thieves. But the Jesus on the cross story is a made-up story to me because it wanted to show the brutality that happened under Nero's reign. Well, we just did a whole video about Flavius Josephus. That's what this whole video was about. So, Jose, you're going to have to go all the way back to the beginning of this video. Well, you have to go to and start this video over. Actually, Jose, I think you asked that question about a week ago, and that's part of why I did this video, is because when you asked that question, I started to, if you're the same person who asked that question, I started to send you to the video I did about Josephus 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I did a video called Josephus is Not a Credible Source for a Historical Jesus. And then today, I was like, I had a couple of subject matters, and I was bouncing between which ones I wanted to talk about. And I went back and I started researching Josephus again yesterday, listened to the video I did 5 years ago, and hence the video today. So, yeah, let's start over. Now, Eleazar, I have no idea who Eleazar is off the top of my head. And when I say stuff like that, it's because, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. So some things I haven't studied in quite a long time. Who is Eleazar? Succeeded his father Abraham after he died. Oh, I don't know much about this guy. I've read about him. If he's in the biblical narrative, I know I've read about him. And actually, if you're with us on Tuesdays when we do What's Wrong with the Bible, right now we're in Genesis. And I know we just started on the part, we just hit Genesis 22 and 23. I mean, Exodus 22 and 23 yesterday. And he was a younger brother, and he was appointed in charge of the sanctuary, his wife and daughter. So his brothers was Nadab and Abihu. And, I had just like, who is Nadab and Abihu? We don't know nothing about these dudes, and they just popped up. And they going up to the top of the mountain with Moses. Yeah, and we'll see more about him when we get to Leviticus. So I've read it, don't remember. because this reading of the Bible that we're doing right now is the first time I've actually reread. I'm reading this book again, like in its entirety. Well, we're not gonna do the entire book, but this is the first time I'm reading it in this format in about 10, 15 years, uh, because I haven't been spending my time. Well, I can say wasting my time really reading this book anymore. Because understand, 10 years, 15 years ago, I did not think that I would be in this position. I did not think that I'd be sitting up here um, doing lives and talking about this stuff. I started making these videos so that if something happened to me, my kids will be able to go back and say, well, what was daddy trying to teach us when we was a kid? And now that we're older, we have a greater understanding, because I know how difficult it was for me to understand these things when I was a child. So I wanted my kids to be able to have my information. So the 2,000 plus videos that you see on my page was all for my children. So about 15 years ago, I started focusing more on hermetics and the hermetic laws and understanding energy and the Tao and things like that. But I'll get to him. We're obviously going to get to that guy and have some breakdowns on him. Oh shit, y'all been typing. My parents keep asking me to come to church, and I may go to shut them up, but I'm rocking my unk if I do go. Okay, they don't even know I walked away. You are better than me, sir. I went to church the last time I went to church, and it wasn't a funeral or a wedding. Um, my mom wanted us to go about 5 years ago. She wanted us to go with her, and my mom's not trying to force me. She knows where I stand, but she just wanted us to go, and because she was going, they was having a special presentation that involved her, so we went. But then the pastor, he knew of me for when I was a deacon over there and at this other church in the Kennesaw Baptist Association, and he tried to come at me and talk to me. He was like, "Yeah, I've been seeing some of your videos," and me and him went at it. And I told my mom, I said, I will never do this again. It's not gonna happen again. But I won't go. I don't care unless it's a funeral or wedding. I'm not going. Uh, didn't Jesus hang on the cross and get help from Josephus of Arimathea and went to India? So there is a story. There's a story of, because it is interesting. When Joseph of Arimathea supposedly came and took him off the cross, he had frankincense and myrrh with him. Frankincense and myrrh are used to heal people from wounds. So the question is, why would he bring frankincense and myrrh to heal him? And he brought some other spices that were more for healing. So he brought healing things. Now, according to the story, um, Jesus was healed by Joseph of Arimathea, and then he went to India, India, Pakistan area, and I forgot what his name is to them, and he taught those people. So there is that story. Eleazar is one of the Maccabees that didn't eat pork. Okay, I will get to him. How do you feel about the Bible saying people will make a way from the faith? Oh, we'll walk away from the faith. Every religion says that. Every religion says that people are going to walk away from that faith and that they will be apostates. And every religion has the antichrist version of their own type of religion of losing their people. And if I was writing a religion today, I would put that in there too, that one day a great siege will come upon the hermetic alchemists, and many will be given unto false doctrines and lessons. They will hear the whispers. Every religion has grown. Every religion begins, apex, and dies. Every last one of them. If they didn't, we still be worshiping Zeus. We still be worshiping, Heru, and we still be worshiping, all these other deities. But we don't. Not in large numbers. because they all live and they all die. Let me see what Facebook said. That Jesus on the cross didn't exist. Nope, sure didn't. What about the stone 8 theory? What if everyone that wrote the Bible was just tripping? I was tripping on psychedelics and having good trips and bad trips and writing down their experiences of what is what it sounds like to me. There are some people who make accounts that some of these things that these people were on shrooms when they had supposedly heard these visions, especially the Amanita mushroom, that they were on these shrooms when they had these visions, and that's how they wrote. Some of those people may have, after they've been studying what Josephus wrote, may have then been on psychedelic trips when they wrote these other gospels and wrote some of these other, writings, especially the book of Revelations. They really think that the writer of Revelation was tripping on some shrooms, and he probably was. But people are going to walk away, and that's a natural thing of religion. Have you ever heard or read that Josephus translated the? Yeah, he did. He translated for Vespasian. I'm gonna have somebody walk in here, so let me take care of this customer. I'm sure he's not standing. How you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going?
First time?
Yes, sir.
All right, so welcome to Smoking Phoenix Cigar Lounge. I'm just doing it live. Don't worry about it. No, you good. Are you hanging out with me, or are you?
I just came in to check it out.
Okay. So we do a daily deal where if you pick up 4 cigars, your least expensive is on the house.
Okay.
You're more than welcome to walk to the humidor. We open every day at noon. We close at 10-ish Sunday through Wednesday, midnight-ish Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We're BY. Do you work for Gwinnett County?
Do I work for Gwinnett County?
Yeah, you work for Gwinnett County or the tobacco industry?
No,
I mean the ATL.
Across the street.
Okay, so we were BYOB.
Uh-huh.
That's the way I say that. So we're BYOB, and we just hang out. We talk trash.
Okay.
That's what we do. You're more than welcome to join us anytime. We have events and stuff. Like we got a cigar event this weekend.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Poker night on Tuesday.
Just stop by, just check it out.
You're more than
I
welcome.
drive by every day.
Yeah. More than welcome to go in the humidor. I can still see him over there. Make sure he ain't stealing shit. I watch everybody. Should have told me the box is closed. There's nothing in there. Where was I? Yeah, he translated the Torah for Vespasian. That's right. Hit like right. Dollar Will said. If he had existed, I forgot to ask. That would be in connection with a statement that I cannot see. The other research name, this other research name, Camilo Aho. This is why I am asking about this. He has 5 parts about Flavius Josephus and the New Testament. He breaks it down pretty good in the presentation. Okay, I'll check that out. Oh, Esau. Yeah. Eshu. Is that Esau? Or I use translate with Jesus. All right, he was called Issa, right? To the Issa or the great healer when he went to India, the Kashmir. So there's something interesting about the Ayus, that terminology, that we have to stop doing as conscious people. All right. I understand the letter J was not invented until like the 1600s, 1700s. It's only been around for a while. You look at an actual authorized King James version, and it says Isus. You go to a Septuagint, it says Ius. Those words mean the Zeus that saves. This is just language. In order for the Greeks to identify with this Jesus character, they had to use the closest thing they had to it. They didn't have the sh sound. The Greeks don't have the sh sound. Kind of like how in Japan they don't have the wa sound, which is why any word that's a W's and they say it differently, because they don't have that wa sound. So the Greeks didn't have the sh sound in their language. So they would not translate Yeshua, because they don't have that. So the closest thing they had was the ius and isus. And so that's why they put the ius and isus in there to represent the Jesus character. They're still talking about the same character. They just are talking about it in their language. My name is Larenzo, right? When I took French, in French, there is no name that can identify with Larenzo. So I had to take a different name. So in my French class, my name was Didier, because we all had to have a French name. And usually if there was a compatible French name, you just did the compatible French name. And you roll with it. But as far as Marietta High is concerned, my name is Didier. It's Didier. It's the one I chose, Didier, because it was closest to, my middle name is Dwayne. So, but it's Dwayne. And Didier was the closest that we could have to that. So you actually hinder your argument when you focus on the J wasn't invented till 1524 and emphasizing that as a reason. It's still identifying the same person, the same character, I should say. So don't let that be the basis of your arguments. And say that, well, you're worshiping Zeus, because they're not worshiping Zeus. It's just language. And I want you guys to be able to defend yourselves, to put on the whole armor of consciousness. If you was with me yesterday, you heard me say that. And I was like, yeah, that's going to be a new term. The whole armor of consciousness. We're going to steal their whole armor of God thing. Y'all think I'm crazy, but you got to watch people in cigar lounges. There are people who steal cigars, especially when they got pockets. And I don't trust none of them. But yeah, so don't use that J thing. Don't use that as a huge argument, because a scholar will be able to rip that shit apart. All right, hold on for a second. You ready?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not a big cigar smoker. I just like to have one every once in a while. I was actually coming in to see if you had some rolling tobacco.
No. But the guy across the street.
I was figuring he'd probably have better options here.
Yeah, no, we just sell regular cigars, man.
Than a gas station ran.
Just regular, just cigars.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, typically when I smoke cigars, like I said, I'm not a huge cigar smoker, so I'll pick up something like the Drew Estate Blondie or something that I can just
little blondie. Just like that flavor shit.
Yeah.
I mean, we have flavor stuff, but I don't have any blondies right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have the Drew Estate job on there.
Mm-hmm.
That'll look good.
And
but I'll probably stop back.
Yeah, you should try Leather Rose.
Okay.
Now,
BYOB?
Yeah, BYOB.
Okay.
Now, Leather Rose is going to be strong now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind strong.
It'll give you that good CBD feel.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
It will.
Okay. Cool. All right, man. Well, I figured I'd swing by.
Appreciate you. What's your name?
Kelly.
Kelly? I'm
the
Renz.
manager over there at Glass Tiger.
Okay.
The tin shop.
Yeah, I see that. All right. Why are you coming over here looking for rolling tobacco? I'm sure some of y'all on here smoke weed, but they take cigar leaves and roll it into weeds. Now, of course, the cigar leaves that they use for weed is like the cigar leaves that cigars are never made out of. They throw that stuff away. Trinidad, 33 degrees Celsius. What did that translate in Fahrenheit? I know it's 80 degrees here in Georgia today, and I'm loving it. I rode my motorcycle and everything today. That's right. I keep my head on a swivel. And I look at them pockets too, see if there's any shapes on the pocket. So where were we? Yeah, I talked about the whole J thing. So we don't want to use that. How do I open the poll? Oh, that's how. I don't know. I just clicked on it. So 27 so far on the poll, 27% of the people knew that Josephus discussed 4 different Jesuses. 73% said they did not know. This is awesome. We got polls, y'all. Like I almost know what I'm doing. Oh, Richie just want to throw his little 33 degrees. It's all right, Richie. It's all right. It's all right. Because in January, I'm moving to Puerto Rico. I don't know what house I'm going to get when I'm down there, but it's going to have a deck. There's going to be plenty of these videos done on the deck or at the beach, Richie. How about that, sir? Throwing his beach ocean lifestyle in our faces. It's just rude. But yeah, so what was I about to say? I don't know. Y'all ask a question, make a statement, something, because I forgot what I was about to say. I forgot where I was at. But yeah, this whole when I first discovered Josephus and Nicaea back in actually I first discovered Josephus back in 90 when I was making my last ditch, like I want Christianity to be right. I'm tired of fighting people and fighting myself. I just want to worship Jesus and just live my life and continue what I'm doing and all this stuff. And when I first read Josephus, I was like, yes, look, Josephus said that he was the Christ, and he was a well-known historian. And I remember having that conversation with a dude on the ship who was on the Navy ship heading to Desert Storm. And he was like, he said, that probably was a forgery. But even back then, there were people who were saying that was a forgery. He said, that probably was a forgery. But he asked me a very good question. He said, there were at least 120 other historians who lived during the time of Jesus in the Levant, and not one of them ever mentioned Jesus. Here's Josephus, who was born 4 years after Jesus supposedly died, yet he mentions Jesus. Would not the other historians who were alive during that time frame, they would have heard the stories. They were in Jerusalem, they were in Galilee, they were in Nazareth, they were in Bethlehem, they were all over that area, within Syria. It was all in that area, and none of them recorded anything about Jesus. None of the Hebraic historians, none of the Romans, nobody who was actually alive during that time, historians, recorded anything about Jesus. But Josephus did. And I was like, damn. And that was about 5 days before we pulled up into Rome. Well, we didn't pull up into Rome. We pulled up into Gaeta. And then we went from Gaeta to up to Rome. And then we went around to the other side where I was able to go to Milan and to some other sites and see some things about Constantine. Bust my goddamn gumbo. I just knew I had something with Josephus. What books can we read up on all of this? Read Josephus's Antiquity of the Jews, War of the Maccabees, Annals of Titus. Read Josephus's work. You're going to get a lot of information about a lot of different things, but just read Josephus's work. And then there are other scholars who have broken down his information. A lot of my information, especially over the last however long YouTube has been out, really hasn't come from books. So if you go online or on YouTube but even before YouTube, so you can go online And if you type in Harvard Biblical Studies.edu, well, Harvard Biblical Studies, and put Josephus, Josephus edu, you'll get videos or PhD papers or lectures from these schools, from these professors in these schools, and their job is to study this shit, you know. So, and I do it with schools that are unbiased, you know, to a certain degree unbiased. If you go to like Dallas Seminary, Josephus edu, it's going to be pushed and geared towards apologetics work, which they've already taken an oath to defend the Bible no matter what they find out. So I do it with Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge. You know, I do it with those types of schools. I do it with different schools around the world. And I read the fors and the against, and I listen to those professors, you know, and their lectures in their class. So a lot of those professors have begun recording their lectures, and I listen to their lectures, and then go research their information of, you know, their references. And then I do the same with different, I go into the archaeology departments and see what the archaeologists are saying, that because those archaeologists, they may not have went and discovered something, but, you know, they have gotten the research or pulled in, they're doing peer review on things that they found in different sites. And so since they're doing peer review and all that sort of thing, and I go and I'll read that, and then I'll find archaeologists who are actually on the ground. Like if you type in you know, who are the archaeologists at Göbekli Tepe right now, you can go and see what they've written, or what archaeologist has wrote about Göbekli Tepe. You can find if you search it, you can find it. And you got to be willing to go past the first page of Google. All right. Sometimes you might have to go to the third, fourth, fifth page. You know, but you find out who is the archaeologist who was in Göbekli Tepe 3 years ago, and then see what they wrote. Find the ones who were there more recently and see what they wrote. Compare their writings. You know. Have you heard about the Pisos and Borgias being partners in the Roman Empire, even now in their? Yeah, I mean, the Pisos and Borgias, they consolidated power. From my memory, I think they consolidated power and finances to invoke papal rule over Italy and over the Roman Empire, and they wanted to keep that power throughout Europe. I know Caesar Borgia, that's that picture of Jesus that people keep on hanging up. Even when you make a black version of it, it's still Caesar Borgia. He don't matter. But I did research on them a while back. Can't remember details about him. I just know he made Jesus into his son, and that they were consolidating power and try to push their influence even more so over the Roman Empire and over Europe. And I think the Borgias, they were in league with the Medicis. They might have been in league with the Medicis, which was at a time the largest banking family in Europe, and they bankrolled the papacy tremendously. So they had it was like modern day. They were the lobbyists of today. They would have the church do what they want them to do, and they would be in league with the church to spread power and money. How you doing, man? English. But that would be an interesting video. I can go back and research them. Put a video together about them. You build the pyramids too? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. I didn't build a pyramid. They were already there when I was born. And I don't think the ancient Egyptians built it either, or the ancient Cushites. I don't think they built it either. I think the pyramids are around prior to the Younger Dryas period. So that would eliminate Khufu and all of them building the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx. Were there other pyramids built afterwards? And you can tell the construction of the pyramids built by the Egyptians and the Cushites were not as well made as the Great Pyramids were built. Yeah, Arius wrote the New Testament with his sons, aka Flavius Josephus. It says that one of his sons wrote Revelations out of rebellion. Yeah. Josephus wrote he wrote that thing. I am like 90% sure Josephus, I'm about 98% sure Josephus wrote Mark. I'm about 90% sure Josephus, his sons, and Philo of Alexander wrote the writings of Paul, all the writings that are attributed to Paul, as well as the other four gospels, as well as some of the gospels that aren't accepted. I think they wrote some of them other ones too, especially the Gnostics, the Egyptians with Arius. I think they wrote a lot of those Gnostic gospels, which we are gonna do the Gospel of Thomas here real soon. Tomorrow we're gonna get back into the Kabbalion. I know we got cut off last week because my son called. At some point today, I don't know what time my daughter lands in Kuwait City, but whenever she lands and she gets past customs and her little friend picks her up, she is under fatherly command to call me and make sure she hadn't tried. She is under fatherly command to call me, and if that happens at any point in time, we will be getting off this phone. Oh shit. Oh shoot, I messed up Facebook. Sorry about that, Facebook. I hit the wrong button. Anything else? If there's nothing else, as Arrow would say, church is going to be adjourned. Are you good? I verified the presentation that you was talking about. Okay. We are going to adjourn the church. One, so before anybody gets here, there's another video I want to record. I'm recording a video today about, what's this video about? Oh, this video I'm recording today is about how the papacy initiated the transatlantic slave trade and the dehumanization of Black people and all other people of color. So that's the video I'm going to record as soon as we're done with this one. And I don't know how much editing I'm going to do. A little bit of editing on it, throw a couple of pictures, and then we're going to keep it moving. So with that, I hope you guys share these videos. All right. Watch all the video. On Facebook, Meta pays better. So when I post a video on Facebook, watch the whole video on Facebook. Because through Meta and YouTube, I'll be able to spend more time outside of here and then devote more time to this. But I do appreciate the cash donations. Thank you, Arrow. He donated today. I greatly appreciate that. Anybody who's watching this later, you can super chat, a super thanks, or what do we call it? Heart thanks. Those would be great. Stars on Facebook. And that'll be great. I appreciate it. But definitely share the video, like the video, subscribe, like on Facebook. What can you say about sequence numbers? Are you talking about the Fibonacci? If you talking about Fibonacci spiral, it's the math of creation. All creation, the universal language is math, and it is the Fibonacci spiral, if that's what you're talking about, is the mathematical formula of creation of all things. You find it in nature everywhere. Do I fully understand it? Nope. I am not a mathematician. That is one reason why when I got ready to go to college, aerospace engineering was not going to be my thing. As soon as I saw the math classes I had to take, I was like, hell no. I'm about to switch my stuff over to psychology and philosophy. Oh, you're talking about 777, 444. I give some level of credence to 1111s and 555s and 444s and all that kind of stuff. I don't give a whole lot as far as, like, when you see those numbers all the time. You just don't recognize them. Your reticular cortex is not identifying. But when you're going through certain situations and certain things are happening in your life, you seem to notice those numbers more often. In the same way, if you go out and you buy a brand new car, before you never really saw that car, but the car was always around you. But now that you bought that car, you're interested in that car. You see that car every freaking where, because your reticular cortex is now tuned in to it. It's a little finger-like piece of your brain. You're tuned into it. So certain numbers have representations, and based on what's happening in your life, cause and effect, you start to recognize and see those numbers all the time. Now, let's say you have your address to your house is 555. 555, I believe, is a number of abundance and growth or something like that, and peace and all that sort of thing. But if your energy is hell, if you have a family that's fighting each other all the time, that's going at each other, you can have 555 as your address, but your house will be in turmoil. You know what I'm saying? So you are a greater causal effect than the natural energy of those numbers, is how I see it. It's kind of like when I was a personal trainer, I used to tell all my clients, 25% of your body makeup is genetics. It's natural. It's in flow with the universe. 75% is the environment that you create around your body and inside your body. And that's what we're going to work on, is that 75%. If you're seeing 1111, which 1111 means you're getting ready to begin a journey, you're starting a new journey in your life and that sort of thing. And you'll oftentimes see 1111 when you start a new job, you get married, you start a new relationship, just some major change happened in your life, you move to another place, or you're about to move to another place, you start to see that 1111 all the time. It happens on your clock every day, but now you're noticing it. It happens twice. But then if you start to allow fear, like that fear chakra starts getting clogged up, and you start to allow fear to embody your life, then that new relationship, that new journey, it may never happen, or it turns into a disaster because you allowed the fear, that 75%, to override that natural energy of that 1111. So it has this part to play, but how we deal with it makes more of a difference. Just like what Jose is saying about astrology in our culture, way before European, right? But just like astrology, my birth chart is very accurate as far as who I am. My life number, I think that's what it's called. It's called a life number. Is very accurate as to describing the type of person that I am. But I can choose at any point to be opposite of what that life number is saying that I am, of what my birth chart is saying that I am, because I can determine my environment that 75% more can override the 25%. And I get the 80-20 rule says that the smaller amount dictates 20% dictates 80% of your results. But when it comes to those kinds of things, cause and effect, the power of cause and effect is way more powerful than the natural energy of things, right? So, because cause and effects only happens when I invoke the law of mentalism. The causation is me either increasing or decreasing my vibration along the pole of whatever that core is, whatever that thing is identified as. And even when I'm vibrating to the right, if I allow the law of rhythm to swing me all the way back to the left. So polarization becomes a very important thing. And if it's done out of balance, without a balance of your masculine and feminine energy, then that's what creates the swing of the pole and changes your mentality. So your mental imagery, your law of mentalism goes out of whack. We're going to talk even more about that as we go through the Kabbalion, which is what we're doing tomorrow. Right now, we're just in the part, we only got as far as giving a brief introduction of each law, each hermetic law, but we still got a lot more to go. We haven't gotten to the all in all. We haven't done, the divine paradox, and then actually get deep into each law. So that's, because what's today? Wednesday. That's Thursdays. So Thursdays right now, because y'all turning me into a book club with this why I left, what's wrong with the Bible on Tuesdays, and now it's the Kabbalion on Thursdays. So I guess the 2T days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, are going to be book club days for a while here. I don't know how far we're going to go through this, but I keep telling y'all that because whenever we stop. All right. And we may skip some, and we're going to skip some books. Some books I'm skipping. I'm sorry. There's no way in hell you're going to get me to do Chronicles. Y'all, hell no. I'm not doing Chronicles. I would die of boredom. You read Chronicles. You know how many times I've stopped reading the Bible when I was younger because I got the Chronicles and I was like, I don't want to read this shit. And so I just stopped. I only saw it like that because our ancestors had oral ceremonies and they did that. And they did that. We are unaware of, they did that. We are unaware of, like that, getting back to the original way. Right. And for me, the most original way is the Hermetic laws. The Hermetic laws are the most original way because how nature functions in the universe is what we have lost the most of. We've lost how we function in the universe. Every other animal, like we was outside in the parking lot getting, getting some sun, and me and my lady, and I was paying attention to this wasp, and I just wanted to see. I saw that there was a storm cloud coming, and I wanted to see how this wasp reaction was. Now the whole time, while the sun was shining, this little wasp, he kept flying around my car. He every now and then come near us, but the smoke kept him away. But he was staying. He was chilling. But then it started raining, a couple of little drops here and there. And I'm just watching this wasp. And it's almost like he knew about a minute before the hard rain started. He knew to fly away and get his ass to safety. And I watched some birds stop hanging out and fly their butt to safety before the rain came down. And I was like, we have lost that. We have that within us, but we've lost it. We've lost our connection to the universe, our connection to the earth. All these power lines around us all the time, all this electricity throwing our electromagnetic field is being thrown off. But that connection, we should be able to sense when something natural disaster is about to happen. But we also don't believe that we can anymore. We've gotten so religified and scientific, and so our level of reasoning has went to the point where we've lost our instinctive our instinctive nature as well. So it's something that I work on for myself. It's hard living in a society filled with all this shit around us. But, you know, we do what we can and we make changes that are necessary to do so. Hence one reason I'm moving to a small town in Puerto Rico. Reconnect with nature more. Like we are very much out of tune with nature. It would solve a lot of our problems if we were. But again, that's it. I want to shoot this video for you because my old man smoke crew will probably be here in about 30 minutes. And I know me, this other video is probably going to take me about 20 minutes to record. So with that, you guys have a great day. Y'all have a great day. Remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is not negotiable. Good journey, good vibration. And we are going to start closing these things out.